As the Nationals are in a little bit of a scuffle against this tough Los Angeles Dodgers lineup, we're going to get into the deep dive numbers of what has been impressive so far about the Washington Nationals and much, much more right after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And today's Locked On Nationals is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome to the show, as this is part of the Locked On Podcast Network where you get your team every day. And if you are an everydayer, then you know who I am. I'm Ryan Clary. I am passionate about this baseball team and I love to talk. So it's made a pretty nice marriage so far with the Locked On Podcast Network and hosting Locked On Nationals. On today's show, we're going to be getting into a bunch of little different things today, as the Nationals are going to try to avoid the sweep against the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're going to get to that at the back end of the show. But in this second segment, we're going to talk about two minor league arms. And if you're seeing the rundown over on YouTube, you'll see those two arms, and they are both relatively big names who have produced at a big level this year. So we're going to talk about two arms down in the minor leagues, but we're going to start off with taking a little bit of a dip into an analytics pool, as the Nationals this year, the deep dive analytics don't really treat them all too well, but there are some simple analytics and stats that really kind of resemble where this Nationals team is. And as we all know, the Nationals have really stepped up from the expectations that I, and maybe you, placed on them earlier this year. We weren't expecting a winning ball club. And if you were, then congrats. You were probably closer than what a lot of people expected, which was the worst team in baseball, for being honest. And it's not because of the Oakland Athletics being awful so far this year. We thought the Nationals were lacking a lot of talent, as a lot of people did, a lot of professionals did. But I will say there were some Nationals fans out there who did not think this team wasn't going to be as bad as everyone thought. I thought it was going to be a poor one. But these analytics that we're going to get into and all these stats really kind of show how scrappy this team is, but most importantly, how they continue to be in ball games, because baseball is not a simple sport. But when it comes down to it, it is a little simple. You get on base. You get hits. You pitch well. You keep the ball in the yard. You control what you can control, making the easy plays. The Nationals have done all of that relatively well this year. As we have seen with the pairing of Luis Garcia and C.J. Abrams up the middle, it seems like a match made in heaven up to this point. Even though C.J. Abrams has had his up and downs in the field, he's made some flashy plays, but he's also missed a lot of routine ones that has costed the Nationals, just like we saw in last night's game. But it's not all about that. Today, we're going to get into some positive news, notes, and analytics that I think best resemble why this Nationals team has turned around. And so far, these are all across Major League Baseball. Right now, the Washington Nationals sit at 5th place as far as batting average goes in Major League Baseball with a .263 average. Now, that's not overwhelming. But at the end of the day, if you are getting in and getting hits and getting on base, that is part of the game that you need to do. Now, batting average is not everything, and it should not be considered everything, because this Nationals team, it's still not translating into wins with being 5th as far as batting average goes. And I'm not really too big into batting average, but I would much rather you be in the top 5 than the bottom 5. And I do believe that this is why this Nationals team is so scrappy early on. You see guys like Joey Meneses hit for high batting average. Lane Thomas, a career high batting average, you must say. And there's others as well, as C.J. Abrams continues to pile on hits, Luis Garcia, and all of these different other pieces across this Nationals lineup that continue to stockpile hits. And it's starting to translate as the team continues to pile those on. And that is a good thing. That is what this Nationals team has done best, in my mind, this season. They are scrappy. None of them are easy outs. They don't strike out a lot as far as everyone goes, really. Now, you see Lane Thomas, he does strike out a decent amount. You'll see CJ Abrams, but then you have guys like Luis Garcia and Keibert Ruiz, who are some of the two highest or lowest strikeout rates in all of baseball, and they're playing every day, it seems like. So having tough outs like those guys that we just listed, it means something because, one, you're going to drive up the pitch count. You're going to put pressure on the pitcher because he can't strike you out. He's going to have to put the ball in play, and that's what those two players do best. So I think a batting average, a high one, you must say, across baseball, is something that has been impressive in my mind. And really, I didn't expect too much of that this year. I thought this Nationals offense was going to be a little bit lackluster, but here we are sitting at 5th in all of baseball for batting average. But here's a more important one, in my opinion. Sitting at 9th in on-base percentage, getting on base at a .328 rate. That is good for 9th in all of baseball. And this is what matters the most. If you've seen Moneyball, the famous scene, what does he do? He gets on base. You need guys to get on base. That is how this magic happens. That is how you're able to drive guys in. This is how the Nationals are able to steal bases, which they have done a little bit better as of recent, as we all complained early on in the season, as the Nationals were getting picked off way more than they were stealing bases. So that was never fun. But this Nationals team, it's not really coming in walks or anything. The Nationals are just getting on base, and it kind of preludes to the point that these are really tough outs that the Nationals are trying to get. Alex Call, I bring him up a lot. I'm not too big of a fan of his as an everyday player. But when you look at what he does and what he does best, he gets on base. He draws walks. He's not going to strike out a lot, and he pitches, and the pitchers, they have to know when Alex Call is coming up because this guy is not going to be an easy out. He routinely gets what I call a quality at-bat. And a quality at-bat, in my mind, is when you get 7+ pitches per one at-bat. You're able to ride the count, stay in there, and ride up a pitcher's pitch count. Because if you were to do 7+ pitches per at-bat over, let's say, the course of, 10 batters, having 7+ pitches, that's 70 pitches right there. On the course of 10 hitters. That's only one time through the order, and then that one spot batting once more. So that, getting the starting pitcher out of the game, which the Nationals have done relatively well this year, all kind of molds into the fact that the Nationals are getting on base, and they are getting on base at a rate that I believe is the most efficient way possible. And on-base percentage is one of my important stats throughout this season. So far, the Nationals defense, we sit at 6th in double plays turned so far at 52 in total. And I believe that this is from, one, Dominic Smith heading that spot over at first base. We saw him try to turn one last night. Really nice play. Tags first base, throws it over to second base. CJ Abrams blocks that ball, which was a great play by him, by the way. And it really shows the growth of CJ Abrams and Luis Garcia. And I think in particular, it's Luis Garcia. Garcia has played a phenomenal second base so far from the Nationals this year in 2023. We saw him over at shortstop, didn't really work. Move him over to second base. That is his more natural step. And that's usually how it works when you are groomed as a shortstop, get placed over at second base. It usually doesn't take that much time to adjust over in that second base spot. But the Nationals, as we kind of talked about with batting average, they are also 5th in all of baseball when it comes to hits. And right now they have 494 hits on the season, which again is good for 5th across Major League Baseball. This team hits. It's a lot of singles, I can tell you that. Not a lot of extra base hits, not a lot of home runs, not a lot of triples, not a lot of doubles. But the Nationals do get singles. I'm going to take singles over a strikeout any day of the week. And at the end of the day, that is still getting on base. While we want to see more power, while we want to see more slugging, The Nationals are playing to their strengths. And what are their strengths? Well, they can piece together a nice hitting performance as they have done here relatively very well over the month of May. As we've seen guys like Lane Thomas and Joey Meneses really catch fire in this month. You've seen guys like Keibert Ruiz kind of crumble so far in the month of May, but you've also seen elevated play from likes of Ildemaro Vargas and even guys like CJ Abrams at times, who has been hot so far in the month of May. But also, lastly, I kind of alluded to this a little earlier. The Nationals had a stolen base problem early on in this year. With the speed that you have with CJ Abrams, Luis Garcia, Lane Thomas, Victor Robles, Alex Cole, we got a lot of speed on the base path, but they weren't really using it to their advantage. But now they sit at 8th in stolen bases in all of baseball with 46. And this is where this Nationals team will help themselves generate runs. When you have guys like Lane Thomas, CJ Abrams, Victor Robles, guys who usually tend to hit a lot of singles, unlike Lane Thomas so far this season, but CJ Abrams, what is a way that you can turn a single into a double, getting yourself in scoring position? Well, when you hit that single, guess what? You're taking off and you're taking second base. Lane Thomas, when you hit that single, you're taking off and you're taking second base as well. That is how you maneuver runs in 2023. And that is what all these new rules with the pitch clock and with the limited throwing over to bases, the limited timeouts. You can't just throw the ball over to CJ Abrams every time. And once they do for a second time and they miss, guess what? You're going over to second base. So CJ Abrams, Luis Garcia, the speedy guys on this team that I believe really could even have a little bit more as far as stolen bases go and more production on the base path. I think we could even see more of that as the season continues. Because as I said earlier, it is what has changed so far in baseball. Stolen bases mean something again. You can have that extra lead and take off and go 90 feet. And the Nationals should be doing that to their advantage. You have a ton of speed. And as we've seen so far, they started off in the bottom echelon of this category, but obviously they have taken a huge step up as May has warmed up. I think you'll continue to see a lot more stolen bases as the season progresses. And honestly, I'd be stunned to see that we aren't in that top 5 category come October. I truly do believe the Nationals can start turning these singles and all of these singles into doubles and extra base hits by stealing bases and then by hitting them home. And that is something that David Martinez will have to work on as the lineup and as the season progresses. But you guys can catch tonight's game as the Dodgers take on the Nationals at 4:10 Eastern time. You can catch every pitch of the Nats hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals. And before we get into 2 minor league arms that have been wildly impressive so far in 2023, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. And guys, make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Here's what I'm going to do. You have the NBA Finals starting on Thursday. Jimmy Butler, you are my guy. I am taking the Miami Heat to win, and not only win, but they're going to win in game 1 and get off to this early lead. I truly believe in everything that he does, and there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And now we get into the 2 arms who I believe deserve a little bit more praise as we get on with this season. As we have seen two prospects so far really blossomed in the year of 2023. And we're going to start out with the Nationals' number 9 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, Jake Bennett. Jake Bennett was a second-round pick out of the University of Oklahoma. I've talked about him just a little bit as his debut with the Fredericksburg Nationals this year, and his majors debut, you could say, or his minor league debut, whatever you want to say, his professional debut. He took a perfect game into the 5th inning. Yeah, this guy's pretty good. I think we saw that immediately. But what he has done most impressive in my mind is that out of his 3 pitches that he throws, a fastball, a slider, and a changeup, you've seen 54 strikeouts in only 42 innings pitched with 8 walks and only 2 home runs allowed while having a 1.00 whip. Jake Bennett, out of the University of Oklahoma, second-round pick of last year, was a teammate of Cade Cavalli at Oklahoma, and then also back in high school in Oklahoma. And now they see each other as teammates again, as Jake Bennett is expected to be a fast riser. And I do believe as these new prospect reports come down, I think Jake Bennett will probably be the biggest riser as far as pitchers go. I think he jumps in and takes the Yarlin Susanna spot at number 6 in the Nationals farm system. I think he could be, by the end of this season, knocking on the door of being a top 100 prospect. But it also just depends. 1, is he going to stay healthy? He has so far, so there's no way to assume that he will not be healthy down the line. And 2, when will the Nationals bump him up to high A Wilmington? And once he gets to high A Wilmington, when will they make the move to go to double A if he continues to dominate? Because he is 22 years old. And as I don't take the ETAs on MLB Pipeline for any worshiping or anything like that, but they do believe that he is expected to be in the major leagues by 2024 and not by the middle of the summer next year. I would probably think the back half of 2024, but that's also depending on how good he is. If he is much better than anyone anticipated, you could certainly see him by May of next year, maybe even earlier than that. But he's also got to progress. He can't take any steps back because he is a second-round pick after all, but he does have that first-round talent. And again, his fastball mixed in with his changeup from the left side of the plate has a southpaw. That is a tough pitch to hit for not only right-handed batters, but for lefties as well. But he's not the only one who has impressed down in the minor leagues, as we have seen a former top pick for the Washington Nationals take a step up this year. And if you remember Savannah McCann from 106.7 The Fan and Baseball America, she talked a lot about Jackson Rutledge and what he can do. You can check out that episode about a month ago or so, as we talked plenty about these prospects. But she talked about Jackson Rutledge, and he has really taken a step up in the year of 2023, as we have seen him really since 2019 kind of struggle. Over 2021, he had a 7.68 ERA in 13 starts. He was dealing with injuries, but then last year, where he wasn't really dealing with as many injuries, in 20 starts, he had a 4.9 ERA in low A Fredericksburg. And again, for a 2019 first-round pick, so when he was a little bit on the older side at this point, at 24 years old, and he was 23 last season, that was not what you wanted to see, especially going up against low A ball in the year of 2022. But now he's up in double A, as he started the year off, again, really well, and they outright skipped high A Wilmington, put him in double A to start this year, which was the right move. And so far, he has been dominant for the Nationals. He throws a fastball, a curveball, a slider, and a changeup. Here are his 2 best pitches, his bread and butter, you might say. It's his fastball. He sits mid-90s. He can reach into the upper 90s. Back when he was drafted, he was really sitting in that upper 90s, but he's kind of softened up a little bit and doesn't really have the juice as what he did back in 2019. But what his pitch, what I believe is his best pitch overall, is his slider. His slider's got nasty horizontal movement, as a lot of people have seen with the deep analytics on him and everything that we see from the Harrisburg Senators group, who have a relatively really impressive pitching staff so far this season. But what I believe has been the most impressive thing about Jackson Rutledge is that he has a 1.15 whip on the season, which is his lowest since 2019 when he looked really good in that little limited time with the younger rookie nationals where he had a 0.99 whip on that 2019 season. And again, only a few handful of starts. But Jackson Rutledge is one, limiting his walks relatively well compared to what he has over his career. Only 14 walks in 45 innings pitched. Now, that's not amazing. It's not what we want to see, but it is an improvement from what we have seen so far with the kid. He's only allowed 4 home runs in those 45 and a third innings pitched. And again, those 4 home runs was one of his really bad issues over the years because he's done a ton of damage. You've seen a lot. If you look at the box scores, you see a lot of times where he puts up a bunch of zeros and he has that one inning where it's 3 runs, 4 runs, and then he gets pulled because that's really how minor league baseball works. You don't really allow these guys to go out there and to get clammed by a bunch of different minor leaguers. It's just very different in that minor league system. You don't want to have people getting all sorts of bad thoughts in their heads as, again, they're still young prospects. These are kids. But it's fun to talk about them because if you have guys like Jake Bennett and Jackson Rutledge who can pan out and help this Nationals rotation, and you maybe have a rival this year with Paul Skeens, the best pitching prospect since Steven Strasburg, it's looking like a pretty good pitching lineup, if you ask me, especially having a left-hander like Jake Bennett in there who has been dominant to start his professional career. So thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. And the Nats play the Dodgers today at 4:10 Eastern time, as you can check out that game as Patrick Corbin makes a start against the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm a little nervous about it, but catch every pitch of the Nats hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals. And before we get into a break here, we're going to preview the Nationals game today as they are going to try to avoid the sweep. We hope. We're going to talk about that right after this. Now we get into previewing the Washington Nationals versus the Los Angeles Dodgers Game 3 preview, as the Nationals have dropped the first 2 games of this series, but it's not over yet as the Nationals get ready to take on Noah Syndergaard, former friend, or former foe, rather, against Patrick Corbin and the Washington Nationals. Patrick Corbin against the Los Angeles Dodgers in his career has a 4.37 ERA in 22 starts. If you remember back to the National League Division Series, Patrick Corbin was not all that great. He came in out of relief, helped a little bit here and there. But Patrick Corbin, as we've seen over the last few years, hasn't been his usual self. But this renaissance in May that we have seen from Patrick Corbin, who is just getting quality starts after quality starts, is important for this young Nationals team, especially going up against a tough lineup like the Los Angeles Dodgers. But I will say, Patrick Corbin has had a little bit of tough luck against some of these guys. And my one shining example is someone that you may not expect to be hearing from, but Miguel Rojas. This is someone who has had the better portion of Patrick Corbin throughout his career. Miguel Rojas has a 4.29 batting average in 35 at-bats. He's got 3 home runs and 7 RBIs. Now, here's the good thing. Freddie Freeman in 39 at-bats has a 2.05 batting average with 0 home runs and only 3 RBIs. Mookie Betts in only 7 at-bats has a 2.86 batting average against this team. But then you have left-handed hitters like a James Outman, who I would expect to not be in the lineup today, as it's a lefty-lefty matchup for him. James Outman, who's kind of been their rookie sensation so far to start the season, who has been very good and a very good power bat for this team. But I would expect for him to sit today, and they're probably going to go with the likes of Trace Thompson, Klay Thompson's younger brother, who has had success against Patrick Corbin, having 4 hits in 10 at-bats against the southpaw Pat Corbin. But again, Going up against this Dodgers lineup, we knew this series was going to be tough. But here's the good news. We get to go against Noah Syndergaard, who has been pretty awful so far to start this 2023 season. Has a 6.27 ERA, 33 strikeouts on the season, and the Nationals haven't really had too much experience against Syndergaard. Thor is what they call him, but there have been some relatively decent moments on him, like Alex Call in 3 at-bats. He's got 2 hits, and one of them being a solo home run from last season. Noah Syndergaard, you better watch out for Alex Call if he is in that lineup today. Jeimer Candelario also has a hit in 3 at-bats against that Noah Syndergaard. But at the end of the day, the Nationals, it is simple for this. The keys to success for this Nationals team is about Patrick Corbin. It is about pitching, and it is about getting the easy outs. When you have guys like Freddie Freeman, Jason Hayward, former Nationals killers in that lineup, that just scares me every time, even with the lefty-lefty matchups. But then you also have a proven vet like a JD Martinez type who, as we saw yesterday, did some damage against the Nationals, and he is a flat-out hitter that you cannot avoid at any point of this series. So Patrick Corbin's going to have to dial it in today. And when Davey Martinez does go to the bullpen, I want to see who he goes to in a close game, because we're talking about this closer situation. And with having a day off tomorrow, I would like to see Davey Martinez go to Kyle Finnegan at one point in this game. And if it would be up to me, I would go back to Kyle Finnegan closing out the games. And I say that because I think Hunter Harvey hasn't been able to handle the stress of being a closer so well. And obviously, we've seen over time with him, he is more comfortable in that setup man role. And Kyle Finnegan, I just have a feeling, is not done yet when it comes to closing baseball games. I still love the talent that he brings. I love the talent that Harvey brings. I love Mason Thompson as well. But Kyle Finnegan, up to this point in the month of May, has been the better option. And we're going to continue to see that as this season grows, in my opinion. So thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can check out the Nats-Dodgers game today on the SiriusXM app, on the SXM app. Just search Nationals wherever you are, because that starts at 4:10 today. If you're on the move and if you're listening to Locked On Nationals, make sure to tune into the SXM app and catch the Nationals game. We'll talk to you guys on the flip side. And again, tomorrow's show, it's going to be an off day for the Nationals. We're going to discuss plenty of everything about this Nationals team. Hopefully we avoid the sweep. I'll talk to you guys on the flip side. Go Nationals. Please beat the Dodgers.